We've got them. We've all got ants. Automatic negative thoughts. They're normal, they're natural. It's actually there to protect you. Ants will never go away, but the way in which we deal with ants, the way we move through that, the recovery time, is the crucial piece around mindset reframing. You've got an ant, comes into your head. I then have to sit with myself for a minute and be like, what did you achieve this year? What did you do this year? What have you got to say? What matters? What are you scared of doing? What is your ant telling you can't do? Reposition it, reframe it. You can do it. You can. You do have the power within yourself to do it. You might need a little help. You might need a little booster. But you can do it. That's fine. Yes, the ants will be there. The mindset reframe is the real powerful thing that goes, hold on a second. I caught you.
Hi EnvisionAirs, it's Nicole here. Welcome to the EnvisionAir podcast. This is the podcast where we envision living our best lives by exploring everyday topics related to health, wealth, and community. On today's episode, we have the amazing performance coach, Aimee Young, also known as the Courage Coach on Instagram and TikTok. Aimee is a CIPD Level 5 certified coach and has won many accolades in the coaching industry, including being shortlisted for the Learning Professional of the Year 2023, Internal Coach of the Year 2023, Career Coach of the Year 2023, Coaching Leader of the Year finalist 2022, and many, many more. Aimee has over a decade of learning and development, as well as HR experience, helping a number of startups and well-established companies to enhance performance with employees as well as C-suite members. She also has helped improve organizational culture in many of these companies. Today, Aimee will be speaking with us about the importance of coaching and how it can transform our lives. I'm very, very excited to welcome Aimee Young on the EnvisionAir podcast. So welcome, Aimee.
Thank you so much. What a beautiful introduction.
Well, we're so glad to have you here. So thank you so much for coming. I'd like to always start the podcast exploring guests or origin stories. So I'd love to know, and I'm sure the listeners would love to know a bit about yourself, maybe your childhood and how you got into coaching professionally.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I was actually born in South Africa in 1986. So a little while ago. I lived there till I was about 14 and moved to the United Kingdom with my family. I've had a wonderful childhood and upbringing. Can't complain about any of that. Went off to university, did a photography degree, loved it, wanted to be a photojournalist. That was going to be my career. I was, going to change the world and all that kind of good stuff.
Nice, yeah.
And then I actually got a part-time job as a teaching assistant in a special needs school, and I fell in love with that, and the whole career trajectory changed, and I ended up training as a teacher.
That's amazing.
I was a primary school teacher for around about 6 years, and then I got to a stage with that where I absolutely loved it, but you kind of outgrow things, and I think careers nowadays are a lot more fluid, and sort of there's a concept called squiggly careers that I really recommend everyone checks out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, very good. And I decided to go into learning and development, which is similar. I always say that it's similar to working with 5-year-olds. You're just really dealing with the same sort of stuff, right? You're dealing with, how to navigate relationships, communication, all that kind of interpersonal sort of stuff between people.
Yeah.
Loved that, and then decided to train to be a coach.
Wow.
And here I am.
Well, what was the pivotal, I assume like learning and development, HR, and coaching? I mean, there is obviously some overlap, but what was the pivotal kind of moment said, I actually want to do and pursue coaching, which I understand is a very arduous and very long process?
It's a great question. I was pregnant with my daughter, Ada, who's now 4. And I was offered some coaching at work through the law firm I worked for, and had an amazing session with this incredible coach who helped me navigate a lot of the questions I had about my career. I was so blessed to be pregnant and so excited about this new phase, but also those kinds of questions that come up for a new parent about, okay, well, I'm going to be coming out of the workforce for a number of months, and I'm going to navigate this new kind of journey, and what will things look like for me? And she was just so incredible and gave me such powerful advice. And it really helped me. And I remember thinking to myself, even, long after Ada was born, in those first few months, those sticky months when you're sort of up at 3 a.m. wondering about, what is going on in the world, reflecting on those conversations with her
Mm-hmm.
and just thinking, wow, that was some of the most valuable time I'd given myself. And I was so grateful for it and so happy.
Wow.
But then I found out when I returned to work that I was actually given that coaching in error. There was no malice. It
Yeah.
was just, it was normally that senior people in the organization that would receive that coaching. And I was sort of like mid-level. I wasn't even a manager.
Right.
And I remember being like, a bit like, oh God, I'm so embarrassed. Because I'd run around to everybody being like, this coaching is incredible. Thank you so much. And my head of talent just was so lovely. And she pulled me to one side and she said, look, I'm so glad that you got to have that, but it was actually an error. And I was so embarrassed. But I then reframed it and kind of thought, well, hold on a second. Actually, why is it that only C-suite normally get access
Yes.
to this kind of support? Surely my
Mm-hmm.
journey is as important. And I just sort of started to think about the role of learning and development, something I still talk about with my different networks today, the impact and the power we have in learning and development to really get to the core root of problem solving and helping and supporting people with their careers.
Yeah.
And that is so beautifully intrinsically linked with coaching. I just thought, right, well, I really want to pursue this and think about how we can democratize that.
That's amazing. Okay, so let's go back. So like it wasn't a linear path into coaching because
Right.
obviously you did the teaching. And I actually remember a post I think that you did recently where you said that your first year of students is now like graduating in like GCSEs or A levels and they're going on to
Yeah.
university.
Yeah.
Oh,
They've all got their
Aimee.
GCSEs. And do you know what? I'm so proud and so elated.
Yeah.
But I showed my mother a photograph of my flower girl the other day because one of my students was my flower girl. And
Oh,
she's in her, they have a prom in the UK when they could sort of get to 16. And there's Alina in this beautiful dress. And I was like, oh my goodness,
wow.
how time has sort of like
Flown
flown.
by. Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's wild. Yeah.
It is wild. But during that time, you've obviously established yourself as an expert in learning development and now coaching. One of the questions I also thought about was how has coaching impacted you personally and professionally? The journey of actually becoming a coach. So, learning all the material, how has that helped you? I appreciate the coaching before when you were pregnant. That was really obviously profound and helped with you. But how did it after when you were actually learning the content?
I I really mean it when I say I think everybody, if they're given the opportunity to train to be a coach, should do it. It is
Mm,
life-changing.
wow.
The way in which you understand yourself, your approach, the way you think, the way other people think, the clarity it gives you in terms of those interpersonal relationships with other people is so invaluable. It is worth any investment you're going to put into coaching.
Wow.
It really, honestly, I'm a completely different person now, than I was before. The way that I handle situations, we all have struggles in our lives. God, everyone does. But my approach to them is so much more kind of well thought out, I suppose. I'm a lot
Mm.
more reflective. I'm a lot easier on myself. I used to have a really mean inner voice. I don't know if you've got an inner voice,
Oh,
somebody
yes.
who's
Yeah,
mm,
it really means sometimes. Yeah, critical. So critical. Oh,
yeah, and I've
yes.
given mine a name. I won't say the name in case any of the listeners have the name. So it's a lovely name. It's just the name that came to me. And I now will, people think I'm a bit loony, but I'll 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 talk to her and I'll say, "Hey, so and so,
Mm.
stop." Like, and I can intervene, and before it becomes something that spirals,
Wow.
it's really, really powerful.
That's actually, yeah, that's quite incredible. The fact that you
Yeah.
can almost like separate yourself from that. It's almost like the ego, like almost being able to separate yourself from ego. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I love that. The journey into ego states, the understanding, that was some of the most profound theory I learnt when I was doing my coaching qualification, was understanding the different ego states and how we approach things, right? So you've got, I think I did an ego infographic recently on Insta, And that's also something I love to do, is I love to take these really complicated theoretical pieces and just make a quick Canva on them and just kind of, make it a little bit more accessible, because it really, really start to understand it. It really kind of makes a difference. But that sort of, if I'm addressing something from the parental ego state, the adult ego state, and the child ego state, oftentimes when we are struggling with relationships, with work, we're referencing it from our child ego state, right? These are the things we learned when we were younger, or we're chipping into our parent ego state, which is how we were raised, or our sort of feelings around how things should be managed, when actually the ideal ego state is adult to adult. And when you understand that and you can pinpoint, okay, hold on a second, who am I speaking as? Am I speaking as parent Aimee, or am I speaking as child Aimee? It's just a moment of clarity, a pause to just kind of pull yourself out of the situation and just reframe.
Wow. I mean, do you ever have conflict, Aimee? It feels like that's like almost like Zen mastership. Like, how do you have conflict, Aimee?
If you see my WhatsApp chats with my girlfriends and my gays, honestly, it is unbelievable. The voice notes. I went through a real, I'll be really open, massive crisis maybe about a month ago.
Oh,
And
sorry.
it was really, oh, thank you. It was really difficult. And it was, I had to I gave myself a pity party. Jennifer Aniston said it when she and Brad broke up. I don't know if you've heard this.
Yeah.
She gave herself one day. So you give yourself one day and then you get on with it, right? You move through it.
Yeah.
And it really required a lot of inner work. It required a lot of reflection. It required a lot of honesty. It required a lot of me holding the mirror up and saying, okay, what do I own? And what does someone else own, or the other situation own? And I'm not saying it's easy by any means. If you speak to my husband, he'll be the first person to say, my goodness me, Aimee will catastrophize. But the catastrophization, I've made up a new word. You're welcome.
I love both.
Thank you. It's still there, but it is a quicker recovery than it used to be.
Wow. Amazing. So you basically gained the tools to essentially navigate lots of different areas of your life, personally, as a mother, parent, potentially as a spouse, and also through work as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, well, if we get into the coaching aspect of it, I think a lot of people can get confused. And you also mentioned that before, this idea that coaching is not therapy, it is not mentoring, it is its own sort of silo of skill set. So maybe you could tell us, in your perspective, what is coaching?
So simply put, coaching really is a very personalized process for individuals and for groups. It aims to really focus on the achievement of goals, right? And focusing on what those goals are and how we get there. What are those habits we do every day? What are those changes we make in order to be our best selves, our best versions, live our best life, for example? There's a lot of work I've mentioned before in there around limiting beliefs. In particular, I work a lot with clients on how to tackle limiting beliefs, tackle that little voice. What is she or he saying? They saying? What are they doing? Because that really impacts you on the daily. And then I think what happens with that is that people get a little bit confused with the mentoring and the therapy, right? And I've definitely had it before as a coach where, it's lovely to be listened to. It's really powerful to have that space, to have 45 minutes, an hour where someone just listens to you. And sometimes that's what clients need. They just need to be heard, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But when we move from just listening to creating action, that's really powerful, right? And I'm not a trained medical professional, so I'm not somebody who's a trained therapist with mental health theory, etc. So my responsibility as a coach, and I always say this in the contracting stage with clients, is if I feel that at any point in this coaching relationship that you're a better signposted rather to a different type of support, then I will support you to get there, right? I will help you get there. But I definitely know my limits as a coach as to what I can help you with and what might be best placed somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. What would you say the skills that, like, if you could say specifically, like, what are skills that someone would expect to get when they go through coaching? Like, Are there any specific skills like goal setting you mentioned, but
Mm.
is it a one size fits all? Is it very different? Are there certain skills that are like, is it about self-awareness? Is it about what you touched on? Is it about addressing those limiting beliefs? What is it exactly?
Oh
Like,
gosh, the thing that's so beautiful about coaching is that it is so personalized and it is so different for everybody, right? You'll have different coaches that are specialists in different areas, but if I think about the types of people that I work with, some of them I'm working with them on their pipeline in sales, right? So I'm working with them on what is that daily activity that they need to do in order to get the deal over the line and make sure stuff happens, right? Tied into that is going to be productivity. What does your day look like? What does your week look like? How do we better time manage? How do we manage stakeholders, build up confidence, all that kind of good stuff.
mm-hmm.
I've got other clients who are senior associates moving through to partnership, and I'm coaching them on not only their business case and how we make sure that that's really tight and we're super hot on our numbers, but also how do we build relationships across the firm? How do we make sure that we think about what our role is right now as a senior associate and how that may change when we become a partner and how we manage those relationships with different people across the organization.
Yeah.
And for some people, it's, hey, I want to start a business and I've got no idea what I want to do. So we'll do values. We'll think about what matters to you. We'll think about what gets you out of bed in the morning, what difference you want to make, what you think is the most important thing for you to focus on. And we'll start there.
Mm-hmm. And how do you use, like you as a coach, how would you use mindset and sort of positivity potentially as a way of integrating that into your coaching?
It really is all about mindset. So you'll
Mm-hmm.
hear me, and you would have heard me a few times now on this podcast talk about reframing.
Mm-hmm.
Reframing is a really, really powerful tool. It's one of the first things I did with people when I started to think about becoming a coach.
Mm-hmm.
Because what I was seeing, especially in the height of COVID, was on socials. There's a lot of toxic positivity. Have you come across that before?
I want to know what toxic positivity is. I want to finish your thought,
Mm.
but I heard about it. Go on, please. Yes.
Well, yeah, we'll get to it because it's
Yeah.
really, it's really something. You know, COVID was really hard for a lot of people. It's really
Mm-hmm.
difficult. And a lot of people struggled with that isolation and being removed from their daily like routines, their networks, their support, etc. When I was going on social media, I was seeing a lot of, yeah, but did you die though? Is it that difficult though? Look at all the things you should be grateful for. Look how
Oh, I
wonderful
see.
this is. Look at this opportunity you've got, etc., etc. And actually, I was working with
Mm.
clients who this was the worst it could possibly get for them. And so toxic positivity was almost taking away their right to feel the way they felt
Okay.
and not really helping them to reposition their mindset to move through what they were going through, but instead was shutting it off. Don't complain about it. Don't
Mm-hmm.
don't indulge yourself in worry about
Yeah.
that, right?
Okay.
When actually the first thing to do, in my opinion, when we're dealing with mindset is to confront the reality of the situation that we are in, explore every opportunity available to us. There's something called the GROW model, which is goals, reality, very important. Goals, reality, opportunity. So what's ahead of you? What can you do? And then the will, right? How are you going to get there? What are you going to do? It's a simple goal setting framework. You can use GROW for anything. It's fantastic.
Mm.
And I would start with the mindset reframing with individuals by looking at GROW. Okay, what is going on for you right now? What do you want to do?
Mm-hmm.
Even as simple as I want to get out the house every day, or I want to make that difficult call to somebody and I can't do that. How do I do it? Right? We just explore all of those opportunities, all the things that are going on for you, and how do we get there? Small little things that we do to get to that intended outcome. I really want people to pay attention to mindset. I always warn people to be very tuned into the toxic positivity and how that can harm. It can be, it's everything's done with the best intention, right? I don't believe anyone out there is actually an evil person. I really don't.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that everything is done with the best intention, and I understand the positivity movement,
Mm-hmm.
but where it becomes toxic is where it starts to really impact people on an individual level,
Yeah.
and where it can really make that mindset reframing quite hard.
Mm-hmm. I'd heard so much about toxic positivity. I didn't know what it was. And now you've explained it. And I get it. And I guess it's hard because there's almost like a fine line, right?
Absolutely.
If you allow people to be like, to feel a lot of the emotions that sometimes can be negative,
Mm-hmm.
deemed negative, right? Then obviously sometimes that can like enable people to be a victim. Sometimes. I can't remember who it was. Maybe it was Joe Dispenza, one of these thought leaders on this topic. And it's almost like you attach love. If you're complaining or you're upset about something, sometimes when we're young, we get love for that behavior, and therefore we want to like get that affirmation subconsciously, not consciously. Then there is a fine line, because you're absolutely right. Like if someone is going through one of the toughest things for them, which may not be tough for everyone, but for them and their circumstances it is, then giving them that space to allow them to feel that is absolutely right. So that's really, really fascinating.
But that's also where we go back to the little voice in your head, right? Because have you heard of ants, automatic negative thoughts?
Have heard of it, but please tell us a bit more about them, because like I love this stuff. Like I read about it, I love it, I learn it, but like please, I want to hear from the expert.
We've got them. We've all got ants, right?
Okay.
They're normal, they're natural. It's actually there to protect you, right? It's there as a fight or flight response to protect you from danger. We've had them ever since we were cave people back in the day. Ants will never go away, but the way in which we deal with ants, the way we move through that, when I talked earlier about the recovery time, is the crucial piece around mindset reframing. Okay, so you've got an ant comes into your head. Oh, there's no point me trying to join this podcast with Nicole, because who is going to want to listen to me bang on about something like coaching, right? Automatic negative thought, right? Normal, fine, okay, that's fine. I then have to sit with myself for a minute and be like, Aimee, hold on a second. What did you achieve this year? What did you do this year? What have you got to say? What matters? Why did Nicole ask you to have a conversation with her about XYZ, right? Take that out of my context, put it into your context. What's happening for you right now at work, in a relationship, with a friend? Who's asked you to do something? What are you scared of doing? What is your ant telling you can't do? Reposition it, reframe it. You can do it. You can. You do have the power within yourself to do it. You might need a little help. You might need a little booster, but you can do it. That's fine. So yes, the ants will be there. The mindset reframe is the real powerful thing that goes, hold on a second, I caught you. I used to say it to my kids when I was a teacher. I'm going to catch you being good, right? Instead of catching them being naughty on the carpet, I'm going to catch you being good. And what you're doing there is you're reframing that negative behavior that other children have got or whatever, and you're reframing it into a really positive thing, and then it's contagious. Everybody else starts sitting up straight, listening, looking at you, etc. I know it sounds really infantile, but again,
I love it.
it's a nice
No,
link.
I think it's so beautiful. I think that's such a nice way of putting it. And is that where you think a coach would really come in? If someone is, let's say, has a lot of ants in their head and they can't get out, they're like ants. It's like ants in your pants.
Yeah.
But it's not. Anyway, is that a point where they're like, oh, I think I should go talk to a life coach because there's too many?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And what we're going to do is we're going to look at those ants. We're going to look at that habitual way that you think, and we're going to catch them before they spiral, right? So in a coaching session, once you've built up a relationship and I've understood exactly what it is you're looking for, and you trust me and I trust you and all of that good stuff, you and I are going to be talking. And a part of that coaching relationship is I'm going to ask your permission to call you out. And I'm going to ask for you to do the same with me. Okay, it works both ways. But I'm going to call you out. When I think you're limiting yourself, when an ant's getting in the way, when that little voice on your shoulder is saying something, I'm going to say, hey, just pause for a second. Where did that come from? Where's your proof? Where did that happen? Where's your data? Show me the evidence. Just going to get you start to kind of rethink that behavior. Catch yourself before it spirals, and you'll notice your internal monologue gets a lot better. The way you treat yourself gets better. But most importantly, when you start to treat yourself better, your expectations for how other people will treat you drastically improves. Therefore, your life improves. It's a beautiful kind of domino effect.
I love that. Amazing. So if you were going to tell someone, let's say right now, one of the listeners has an ant in their head, what is the 3 questions you would ask them right now to try and catch the ant?
When has this happened before? Where is your evidence or proof that this is a reality for you? What's one thing you'd say to a friend who's going through the same thing right now? How would you talk to that friend? That is the most powerful question, right? As soon as you ask that third question, the way you talk to yourself completely changes, because you're not going to be evil and
Yeah,
mean like you are
Amy.
to yourself to a friend or a loved one, are you?
Amy, that's amazing. Love it, love it, love it. Okay. I have one more question before we go into the EnvisionAir questionnaire. This actually came from my husband. What is the one advice you would give, like, you think that's applicable? What's the one advice that is the most applicable to everyone? It's so universal. The best advice that either you've received or that you would give that is applicable to everyone.
That's a great question. I think at the root of it, on some level, everybody is driven by values. Some more than others. And I would always advise anybody to trust yourself, because if something doesn't feel right, it's more than likely it is contradicting your values. And you need to pause for just a minute and have a little conversation with yourself about what's going on there. It might not be that the situation that you're in is completely wrong, but pausing might make you reframe the way you approach things, the way you draw a boundary around yourself, the way that you explore your future within something, a relationship, a job, whatever. But if it is feeling not quite right, if it's feeling a little bit icky, there's something going on, and I just want everyone to tune a little bit more into what that inner voice is telling you.
I love that. That's amazing. Thanks, Amy. Right. Well, let's move on to the EnvisionAir questionnaire, which is a fun feature of the EnvisionAir podcast. And we ask our guests to reflect on their past, present, and future. So, reflecting back to a younger, obviously very still young. We're very young. A younger Amy, 15 years old. What advice would you give her and why?
Interesting. 15 years old, having lived in the UK for a year.
Yeah, exactly. That's interesting.
Yeah, and I was really angry with my parents. So the advice I would give myself is to trust the process and be kinder.
To yourself or to your parents?
To both.
Aw, I hope they listen to this.
Me too. We have an amazing relationship.
No, of
just
course,
to caveat that.
But every 15-year-old,
Yeah,
especially
yeah.
girls, I feel like we're even more like just
goodness.
hormonally charged, and so it's out of control.
100%.
Okay, reflecting on the present, if there was anyone in the world you could seek advice from, who would it be and why?
It's kind of an obvious one, being South African, but, and I don't want people to think this is too cheesy, but it is Nelson Mandela. And the reason it's Nelson Mandela is because he did so much to pave the way for forgiveness and moving forward, that I think everybody, but in particular me, somebody who does struggle to let go sometimes, I would really benefit from a conversation with him.
I've seen interviews and his book, and just learning about how he didn't hold any grudges, even to the people that were the worst people to him in the prison, and it was incredible.
He's the single reason why there was not a civil war in South Africa. He's the most incredible man. He was the most incredible man. He will continue to be the most incredible man, because what happened in apartheid, what happened in my home country, I mean, that's a whole other podcast for us to talk about, is unforgivable. Yeah, and he really, paved the way forward for the Rainbow Nation, and really had all the best will in the world to create a brighter future.
Love that. And I think that's a great guest. I would absolutely love that too. Okay, what's one goal in the future, in the next 5 years, that you would love to achieve?
These are fantastic questions. It would normally be work related. Everyone around me will absolutely attest to the fact that I'm a workaholic, because I don't have a hobby. Like, everything I do is literally coaching and learning and development. I just love it. But it's not going to be. It's going to be to take my health and my wellness as seriously as I do my career.
Love that.
I want to be here for a really long time, and I want to be here for Ada, and I want to give her the best life possible. And I think we could all learn a lesson from that. You know, a lot of us are really focused on the here and the now, but actually, what are we doing
Yeah,
to future proof?
100%. Oh, I love that.
Mm,
So, like, longevity, questions of longevity. Yeah, I agree with that. Because there's no
yeah,
point of living a long life if you're not able to, like, ride a bike or something.
right.
Why did I say that? Get to ride a
Gotta ride a
bike.
bike.
Ridiculous. Anyway, all right. Well, thanks, Aimee, for being part of the EnvisionAir podcast. We
Pleasure.
absolutely loved having you on. It was really great. So interesting. Now I understand why everyone needs a life coach. And if anyone is interested in connecting with Aimee and learning more about her coaching work, please visit her website. It's aimeeyoungcoaching.com, and Aimee spelled AIMEE, and Young, YOUNG, and then coaching.com. And I'll also leave all of her links to her Instagram and TikTok and LinkedIn, which she's very active on, and you can learn so much on a daily basis. She leaves lots of little nuggets. So thank you, Aimee, again for being part of the EnvisionAir podcast.
My pleasure. I had a great time. Thank you.
Aw. Okay. Mwah. Lots of love. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure you hit subscribe and check out this video here.